Hello there. Here's my response to your response. Your assumption that I'm referring to gay marriage in the US is not quite right. I really meant gay marriage anywhere. Whilst it's true that in the UK we have same-sex civil partnerships, we don't actually have gay marriage. I've spoken before about why I think it is that it's wrong to have civil partnerships for same-sex couples and marriage for mixed-sex couples, but I also think that it's an important point that really does bear repeating. A same-sex civil partnership in the UK is the legal equivalent of a marriage between a man and a woman. So if that's the case, what's the big deal? Why am I moaning about it? Well, the big deal is that if it's legally the same as a heterosexual marriage, then having a separate legal classification is redundant. And the only thing that's achieved by not calling a same-sex civil partnership marriage is that you placate those bigots who want to keep marriage all to themselves because they feel that it's too good for the homos to have it. And a two-tier system is not equality. Different but equal is not, in the end, equal. If a civil partnership is the same as marriage, we should call it marriage. If it isn't the same as marriage, then that's discrimination that's purely based on someone's sexual orientation, and that's wrong. And by not calling partnerships marriage, the state is actually giving implicit approval to the views of those bigots who feel that gay relationships aren't as valid as heterosexual ones. So, yes, we homosexuals in the UK do have a means by which our relationships can be legally recognised, but it's not equally recognised, and that's the issue. Now, moving on to your point about the state having a say in who can or cannot get married, I think we have to accept that the state does, and probably should, have a part to play in marriage, simply because the act of getting married bestows rights and obligations that are not present for people who simply cohabit. You've got rights concerning property, inheritance, next of kin status, protection from having to testify against a spouse, and so on. And regardless of whether or not Abraham Lincoln actually had a marriage license in the sense that we would recognise it today, I'm sure that his marriage would have been recorded, and that would have been a legally binding contract and legally recognised contract between him and Mrs. Lincoln. And that's why, presumably, she went on to become his widow and not just some bird that he'd shacked up with. I think where you and I view marriage very differently is that you seem to see it as a means of control by the state, whereas I see it as a means of protection. What I feel state-sanctioned marriage gives us is consistency in terms of legal status. It's wrong to put people in the vulnerable position of having the validity of their marriage questioned, and that's why it has to be a legally binding contract, and one that's widely, if not universally, recognised. It's got to be recognised across state and national borders, and not only for divorce, but even when you're together. Who gets to visit a sick or dying partner in hospital? Who gets to arrange or even attend a funeral? The legal status of the spouse as next of kin is important for that reason alone, and there's some really, really heartbreaking stories that back up that viewpoint. Cohabitees don't have that protection or that legal status, and without this legal instrument of marriage, that's how people who simply live together are going to be viewed. Without legal recognition of the relationship, life can get a whole lot more complex and uncertain and unfair. And, looping back to what I was saying at the beginning of this video, that's what I want from gay marriage. Just fairer world.